that's what the business owner, the site creator, the person trying to create this funnel needs to think about is what are those unknown unknowns that you can help serve to your audience.
Hey there guys, Mike here from Sell Your Service. Welcome to another mastermind session. In this video, I'm going to be interviewing Dan Shure from Evolving SEO and also his podcast, Experts on the Wire. Dan and I had a conversation many years ago now on another older podcast that I had, and Dan is an SEO genius. He's written for Moz, he's got a bunch of amazing clients, and basically what we're going to be talking about in this video is how to drive traffic to various stages of the funnel with SEO. Really importantly, Dan talks about the relationship between people that don't know that you exist and people who are thinking about making a purchase and people are customers, and those different types of searches that you can get involved with to drive traffic back to your funnels for your customers or for yourself. Really, really insightful. And Dan's done a ton of tests as well. So he kind of skips all of the stuff that you have to do and basically goes into a few amazing revelations. One in particular about community and Facebook and its relationship with SEO, which was absolutely fascinating to me and has really flipped my idea of how I perceive SEO and search engine traffic. So without further ado, let's get into the interview and I'll see you at the end. Hey guys, so welcome to another Sell Your Service Mastermind. This week, I'm really, really happy to be joined by Dan Shure. Dan, how you doing?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, well, I was going to say thank you for coming on. And of course, a long time ago, we did another podcast series with you. And obviously, things have changed for, I think, both our businesses. We've progressed and moved forward. And we talked a little bit kind of about SEO in general. But for those who don't know who you are and what you do, what's Dan Shure all about?
All right. So I went to school for music, and then, as all of us that end up in SEO or digital marketing, we go to school for something that had nothing to do with where we ended up. So I have a degree in classical piano performance, which is a worthless degree in terms of the job market.
I
did teach music for a little. Yeah, I did teach music for a little while and did the gigging thing. Driving hours and hours to make $60 before expenses. But fast forward, throughout the 2000s, I built a few websites of my own. I had my own music lesson company in which I had to build a website. I had to learn how to market it. I used SEO to grow that business. I used SEO to grow a few of my dad's businesses as well. My dad's a sculptor, so he sells sculpture reproductions online. It was an e-commerce shop. I built the whole thing with like SQL and stuff. And fast forward to now, really it was a slow, gradual, mainly organic transition, no pun intended, that led me to doing SEO. I learned through those experiences of having to do it for myself and doing it for my dad's businesses. That is just something I really loved. I love that moment when you install analytics and you can start to see the traffic patterns. I love those little, not so often these days, but back then, those little tweaks, those little hacks that you could find in SEO that could move the needle. And there's still some things like that out there today. But I just love that SEO is sort of holistic, right? It's left brain, it's right brain, it's marketing, it's science. And so that really suited me. And so organically it grew into where I am today, which is I have a SEO consulting company. It's a 2-person company with myself and my wife who does a lot of the business and some kind of reporting and things like that. And we work for a whole range of clients. I mean, lately, as I tweeted a little while ago, I've been working for WGBH. That's a Boston's local NPR station here in Massachusetts, to projects with B2B companies, e-commerce sites, and the list goes on and on. So that's kind of where I am today in terms of doing SEO. And I'm sure we'll get into all the details on that, but largely an SEO consultant now.
And you've written for Moz?
Yeah, I'm technically what's called a Moz associate. And it's this thing they haven't quite defined very well, because literally every person I talk to is like, what's a Moz associate? We are a handful of about 30 or 40 or so people that might answer some questions in their Q&A a few times a week. We can go to their conference with a free ticket if we are able to get ourselves to Seattle. The cross-country trip is not always possible for me. And we can write in their blog. It has to go through the editorial process, but we don't have to submit it to UMoz first. So I probably have a good 5 or 6 posts on Moz throughout the years. I find that when I do create written content for SEO, I am not of the type that can just say, oh, I'm just going to do something real quick and bang it out. You know, it takes me a few days, honestly, to get through content. So it's usually a painful process of losing a few nights sleep when I'm writing for Moz, but that's why I only have a few posts on there.
Sure. Yeah. And of course you've got your podcast as well. Yeah.
Yes. I have a SEO podcast called Experts on the Wire. Little funny anecdote is the building that I'm sitting in used to be a steel and wire manufacturer.
I think I saw this on one of your posts, actually.
You saw that tweet, and I knew that before I named the show, but then it just got lost in the back of my mind. So I didn't name the show with that consideration or that connection. And then I remembered later on, I was like, wait a second, I'm sitting in a former wire manufacturer. But the idea behind the word wire is that online marketing, or really marketing, is about communication.
Sure.
And wires are how we, you know, I know things are wireless now. Maybe I should have called it experts without wires. But, you know, nowadays we are communicating digitally. And to me, that's what marketing is. When you boil all marketing down, whether it's SEO, whether it's PPC, CRO, it's all the psychology of communication between people. And so that's really where the wire came from. It was a name that I liked, but I've never quite loved it, but it is what it is. And I named it, and I short of renaming it, which is a whole process, I'm going to stick with it. So Experts on the Wire, my aim is to post a weekly show where I interview an expert in SEO or online marketing. We've had guests like Rand Fishkin from Moz, Annie Cushing, the analytics expert, John Mueller from Google, and so Noah Kagan from Sumo. So a whole wide variety of people. And I try to tie things back to SEO in one way or another, but we do kind of veer off because SEO is really taking inputs from all of these different channels.
It's almost as if you knew what we were going to talk about, because that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today is SEO and driving traffic to your site. I think a lot of people, particularly funnel builders, so the guys who are watching this are going to be building funnels, they're mainly concerned with top of funnel based traffic. And that we could talk for hours, days on that. But there's also other stages in the funnel, like when they're a lead and they're in the kind of awareness and conversion stage, right down to being a customer, and how they use how customers will be searching for content and searching for answers. There's really so many different ways that people are using search engines to come and touch your business. We recently have really got into remarketing, for example, and it's completely changed how I view SEO, So talking about, we'll keep it really high level and we'll delve into a few areas. Why is it important to understand that search is not just for brand new, top of funnel, don't know you exist type searches? Why can we start looking at other stages of the funnel as well?
Well, I think because we're humans and we have needs and problems, and we search from all stages of needs and questions that we have. In fact, I learned from AJ Cohn, who I last interviewed in my podcast, Google apparently has 500 or more classifications of search intents. Meaning, it's not just buy or research or navigate to a brand. It's all these nuances of for example, maybe you're doing a search where you want to save information.
Sure.
Maybe you're doing a search where you want to link to information. And of course, as you talked about, mid and low funnel, maybe you're doing a search not quite ready to buy the product or the service, but you're in that stage where you're researching. And you're looking at reviews. Maybe there's a search intent that's intent to look at reviews of products. And so search is important because, to me, search is this really interesting, just digital reflection of real life. And people in real life have needs at all stages. And so that's mirrored in search. And you can classify keywords by all varying degrees of that funnel and search intent. So the fact is those searches are there. And when you boil it down, SEO is nothing more than trying to cast a net to cover as many relevant keywords to capture as much of that traffic as you can. So it makes complete sense to go after not just top of funnel, but mid and low funnel.
Yeah, the biggest one for us was we released a piece of software recently the guys who are watching this, they'll be sick of me talking about. It's called Beaver Funnels. And our dev came up with a really interesting point, because we were talking about the support and, help part of the process. So after someone's bought, how are they going to start using it? How do they search for options? And he said, Mike, how often have you gone either to Google to search for the problem on a product that you already own, or gone straight through to their website? And it's always, again, it's straight to Google. People don't even go to the manufacturer's site to look for how-to guides. They're actually going to Google, and there's even third-party how-to guides for so many products out there. And
Yes.
it completely flipped how I perceive attracting traffic. It's like opened up this world. And that's one of the things you can start doing, is optimizing the guides for your content, or if it's building for your customers, their content for their current customers, understanding how they want more support, right?
Yes. I think, if I'm remembering this correctly, Professor Scott Galloway, and if your listeners are not familiar with him, his videos and content are incredible. They're not only the information in them, but how he produces them. He's a professor at NYU, and he covers everything from business down to marketing. And I believe he just posted a video recently where he talked about the place to be in marketing is not acquisition. I mean, acquisition is important. Sure. The conversion process is important, but it's that nurturing your existing customer area. And you're reacting to that. Yeah. And you should definitely check out his video. I'll send it to you if you can find it. It's a recent one on his YouTube channel. And he talks about how this is when you look at a company like Google. Now we're getting meta, but when you look at Google, when you look at Amazon, when you look at the big companies now, that's what they're doing really well. And so there's this huge area of opportunity back in search to do what I call a branded keyword audit. And that's to take your brand name, or your name, the name of the CEO, any proprietary word that can only represent you or your company. And you can put that in a tool like Answer the Public or keywordtool.io or keywordkeg.com, and it'll spit out all the long tail stuff that people are searching around your brand or your product, whatever branded term you enter in there. Yeah. And so quite often, this is more a play of you're a bigger brand or an older brand that has this type of search volume happening. But often you'll find maybe things people are searching around your brand that you're not serving them answers well. And so even if there's 20 searches a month for brand name customer support or brand name contact page, whatever it is, if you should have a piece of content on your site that answers that question.
Yeah, we did some work a couple of years ago for a telco company. And the first thing we did was run a report on, like, how are people finding their business and why are people searching for their business? And it was something like 80% of the searches was something to do with some kind of support with the brand name.
Yeah.
It's not like people are going, oh, I want to buy this telco company's product. It's actually, I already have their product. I want to fix something. And yeah, a lot of it was how to get in contact with people, or, all the different ways that people were searching for that. And again, by showing that to the guys, it was like, we're missing out on enormous opportunities here, not just from a traffic perspective, but actually serving and helping our customers.
Yes.
By providing them with shock of shocks, the answers that they need, and it's not overly complicated. And some of this stuff can start ranking with just a really well-written page. It's not, this is another thing. I think a lot of people think, oh, don't I need to start, and I'm a proponent of this. I think obviously you should be writing regular content all the time, but some stuff can be optimized really, really well. Just for one page, if you're going to be going after some specific keywords, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when it comes down to it, you need to, whether it's top, mid, or low funnel, your keyword should be grouped in a topical or intent bucket and all aligned and mapped to the correct page. Now, this is the area of SEO. Now we're getting into some of the good detailed stuff. And if your viewers are wondering why I keep reaching over to my left here, it's because I have a camera of my own and I keep hitting stop and start to maybe capture some things for myself.
Yeah, man, go for it.
Yeah. This is the true, in my opinion, the true art of SEO right now is being able to get really good at aligning a keyword with the proper intent and then creating the right piece of content or the right page to map to that And this is where so many people make a mistake, where they're still maybe in that old school mindset of just mapping a keyword to a keyword.
Yeah.
And just literally, I'm trying to think of an example, maybe something that I ran into recently. So take something like, and I'm just going to make up what I think the results were, but colleges in Boston or Boston colleges. Okay. That sounds like a simple, like, give me a list of colleges, or like, it sounds like it should derive a simple result. But when you actually search Google and you look at that, number one, it's a broad keyword. So that's where the intent is vague. And that's where, before you create that page, and if your business is, a lot of your listeners, software folks, or, okay, so
they'll be building funnels. So they might be services, or, however they want to run it.
Building funnels. Yeah. So maybe it's like a, CRM software or something like that. Like, before you create that page for CRM software, search it in Google and look at the results and figure out what, based upon, because Google has gotten really good in the last year or two at serving intent over just keyword match. So search the term that you're interested in Google, and take some time and study those results and ask yourself, are these, at a very general level, start with two buckets. Is it a product intent, or is it a informational intent? Yeah. So if you search a keyword in Google and you see a lot of other software homepages or product pages, that's a product intent search, where Google has kind of figured out people are probably looking for a product to buy. But if you see a lot of articles ranking, informational stuff, social profiles, that's more of a top funnel informational search. And that's a good starting point, because what I see happening is a lot of software companies creating a blog post when they should have a product page, or creating a product page when they should have a blog post.
Yep.
That's like the fundamental mapping that you need to do before you go any further with your SEO.
I think you spoke roughly about this, I think, on our last call. And for those listening, I'll see if I can find the videos, because it's one of those things where you release it, the series gets on a different channel. I've got them knocking around somewhere. And one of the big things you talked about was the difference between the language that someone uses when they are ignorant or unaware, and the language that someone uses when they are aware. For example, a lot of our guys as funnel builders, let's say that you want to start ranking for SEO for your own service. Your customers might not know that they need a marketing funnel. So you have to try and go after those keywords where they are looking for intent on information, understanding more, such as, how to drive more sales from my website. Bad example, but how to drive more sales from my website, as opposed to someone who goes, I actually know now that I need a marketing automation funnel. Let's look for marketing automation funnel specialists who work with ActiveCampaign. So there are, again, two very distinct sets of intent-based keywords there that ultimately could lead back to the same thing,
Yeah, and this is what Dan and Chip Heath called the curse of knowledge and made to stick. It's the business owner that knows too much, and you need to find ways to get outside of your head and your own mental bubble. And two great tools for doing this is the Moz Keyword Explorer, where if you go there and you start with a topic that you know about, right? So like, start with your curse of knowledge and just enter your product category or your specific product name. And then there's a few filters you can try. One is filter by broadly related synonyms. One is exclude query terms. You're basically trying to get the tool to spit back to you tangent topics that are getting outside of your own thinking. So that's one way I love using tools, is to help me get outside of my own head. And it's a great tool, actually. If you're an SEO like myself and I'm doing keyword research for an industry I have no clue about, if you give me a law website to do SEO for, I have no clue. Like, I don't know anything about that. So I rely on these tools. And the second tool is BuzzSumo's Question Analyzer, which used to be called Bloomberry. And it does a similar thing to Moz, but the functionality behind it is it will search its database of like millions of questions on Reddit and Quora and Yahoo Answers to find related questions that people have asked around your topic. So if you enter in, accounting software, it's going to spit back to you all of these other categorized questions, and it bolds the co-occurring related topics.
Wow.
And so this circles back to your question, which is, how do you get out of your own head, and how do you publish topics that are, what they really are for the users? They're the unknown unknowns.
Yeah.
When I started to try to learn how to make my own e-commerce website in like 2009 to learn PHP, it was the classic case of, I don't know what to search for. I don't know what I'm looking for. I know I want to make an e-commerce website, but I don't know to search for if-then statement, or what specific function to connect the database with PHP. And so that's what the business owner, the site creator, the person trying to create this funnel needs to think about, is what are those unknown unknowns that you can help serve to your audience?
Yeah, and that's something that we found real success with. A lot of our funnel customers are insurance businesses, and insurance businesses will throw money at PPC. They love it. And
yep.
Particularly in the States, we work particularly with brokers. And yet, for going after very, very specific search terms for one particular avatar at one particular stage in their cycle, and we would narrow it down. We say, okay, well, they're a new family, they've got a new home, probably in a relatively new management-based job. They need insurance, but they don't know what they're searching for. So we need to find topics that we know that person's going to go after. They're actually not looking for a particular keyword of, and insurance agents we found were really bad at this. They were like, oh, well, they're going to be searching for, Pro X level 4 insurance. I'm like, I work with you and I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
What they're going to be looking for is how to save money for my family and how to save money on, my car insurance. That sort of real basic stuff is what they're looking for. And it's very, very different when you're at the top of the funnel. And like you say, they're ignorant, but you have this curse of knowledge. I love that. Who was it who said curse of knowledge? I love
so
that.
That's the great marketing book, Made to Stick. And I don't know about you, but I sort of have this feeling that 95% of marketing and business books are fluff and a bit of a waste of time.
Yeah.
But Made to Stick is one of these books that came along that really said something new. And even if your listeners, watchers don't read the book, go to Google and search for the Made to Stick Success Framework.
Very cool.
And it's just a framework that gives you elements that your content or your marketing should have. So for example, it should be sticky. I forget it's an acronym, right? But I forget what all the letters stand for. Simple, like all of these things. And so Made to Stick was a book that came along that I read at least 2 or 3 times back about 10 years ago, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, that has really, really helped shape in a big way the path that and how I think about marketing, whether it's SEO or creating content. So I highly recommend that book.
That's interesting because to me, one of the big things I wanted to ask you about, and you mentioned it there about how the strategy that you've taken from this overall marketing book is reflected in your SEO. And I find that as well, that our overall financial strategy and business strategy is often reflected in our SEO. Everything from little and often, right? That's a great financial strategy. That's also what helps us rank for some big keywords, right?
Mm-hmm.
And particularly what we found is that even though recently, like YouTube's adpocalypse, a couple of Google's algorithm changes, the big Facebook algorithm changes that people keep yelling about, and yet our traffic keeps going up, okay, all the time. And to me, that's because I focus on making sure it's my platform, my site. I'm writing stuff regularly. I'm writing stuff that my audience are going to be interested in. And it's kind of allowed me to sidestep. We do invest in PPC and Facebook ads and all this kind of stuff, but it's allowed me to sidestep some of these big changes. How have you seen some of these changes come about, particularly with SEO? Because to me, it's often the people who complain are the people who have been trying to hack the system a little bit. And yet if you stick to a longer term game plan, you can ride out those changes,
I'll start with a quick little anecdote of something that happened in late 2015 with a client that I was working with. I was helping a client with SEO, and I was helping them grow their blog traffic, and that was working.
Yep.
And parallel to that, they were running Facebook advertising. One day, the Facebook ad guy quit or got fired.
Yep.
So all their ads shut off like a light switch.
Yeah.
in about a week or so, anecdotally speaking, so don't everyone go say, oh, blah, 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 like Dan said this. It's like, this is one case study that I noticed, but anecdotally, they lost some search rankings and search traffic when their Facebook ads got shut off.
Interesting.
And so since that time, what I've noticed and try to pay attention to and do a little proactively is look at that weird, ambiguous relationship between Facebook and Google rankings. Fast forward to this Facebook newsfeed update, which happened sometime in January. I have a client I'm still working with now, big site. Everyone I'm sure knows about it. It's a big content website. It's been around for a long time. He was very affected by the Facebook newsfeed algorithm in terms of Facebook traffic directly. And in fact, if you look at the traffic of his site and many other sites, when you see that graph, BuzzSumo put out a great study that shows the rise of Facebook traffic to publishers and the drop of that. His traffic looks almost like that pattern. Interestingly, he also has been losing some search traffic since January. And I go in and I look at it and I'm like, okay, most of the traffic was lost to the homepage. All right, so that's branded. And then like, there's no other pattern. Some content really increased in traffic, 1,000%, 2,000%. And some pieces of content have been chopped in half as far as their traffic. So when I step back and look at that, I say, okay, was there a Google algorithm update? Or has Google been picking up less activity based around this brand in Facebook? And so in a really circular way, but I hope enlightening for some of your listeners, these things all work together. The Facebook newsfeed impacts search. Search impacts Facebook. And then, to blanket over the entire thing, what has impacted all of that? It's been politics and news. Right? I mean, that's what's impacted all of this stuff trickling down. I mean, that's why Facebook is changing their algorithm. I mean, it's just the reality of the situation. So it's all very interesting how you need to think of this all as a working ecosystem, not just things in isolation. So, I mean, what it sounds like you're doing really well is kind of circumventing around that, right? You're not relying just on Facebook or just on Google or just on PPC. It's just common sense diversification. And so...
No, go for it.
That's what I recommend everyone to do globally and also within SEO. So you shouldn't invest only in low funnel keywords. You shouldn't invest only in top of funnel keywords. You should be diversifying your keyword spread as well as your content type when it comes to aligning with SEO. I mean, image SEO, 30% of searches on Google supposedly are image searches. Where's all the people talking about image SEO in Google, right? What about Bing? I mean, some industries, Bing can provide plenty of search volume for what you need to work on your business.
Insurance was amazing on Bing. People, for a reason, they search for insurance on Bing. And I don't know, like, no one had a really good answer for that. But again, it goes back exactly to your point. To assume that one channel is going to do everything for you, either your industry or the stage in the funnel, it's nonsense. It's not a good way to run your business. You've got to check out these other channels. We're finding Reddit as well for some of our guys who do quite specific software-based stuff, and especially courses as well. Reddit's a fantastic channel to go after, and again, slightly different stages of the funnel, but that's interesting that how you find the relationship, because everyone's always suspected it. Facebook and Google, everyone's like, I'm fairly certain that there's some correlation here, but no one was really definitive about it. But to me, this big change, it's also about, if I'm using Facebook's channel, it might be because if something goes wrong, I'm kind of at their beck and call. They can do whatever they want. And you could argue the same with Google, but the difference I found with SEO is that the changes are more subtle when I have a stronger organic search strategy. I mean, it's super simple, right? Publish once a week, speak to your audience, write stuff that people want to read, especially your customers. And wouldn't you know it, I believe that they can weather some of these big changes coming when where people were like freaking out about Penguin. I mean, it was like the apocalypse was happening, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
really you saw some of those guys actually take advantage of that and grow because of it, you know?
To me, Facebook, and this analogy might be a stretch. I've used this analogy for other scenarios, but Facebook almost feels like it's oil or coal, and Google is solar power.
Sure.
In other words, Facebook is this fleeting newsfeed. You have to keep posting, you have to keep advertising, you have to keep feeding it.
Yeah.
Whereas Google, I mean, I have clients that have content from 2008 still ranking really well.
Yep.
And so that's how I think of it is that when you play in these evergreen areas, it can really provide return on value over and over and over again for many years.
Absolutely. I love that analogy. I'm definitely going to use that.
Glad it worked.
Quote you on that, because I've one of our big philosophies, again, is it's not that dissimilar to the investment side, is by doing something regularly and often, you are telling Google, hey, I'm going to be around, I'm putting the time in, I'm putting the effort in. And that momentum, I now get more traffic from one post than I could ever get as a sum of its parts, if you see what I mean. I could never get that individually by posting it once. Facebook, absolutely. I could get 10,000, and we've done it. We've done some experiments where we've got like 10,000 visitors in the space of 24 hours. We threw a ton of money on it, but that's almost like speculative day trading.
Yes.
It's gamble is the wrong word, but I'm putting money in. I go, great, I got some results out. But we all know that Facebook is notoriously hard to scale. It's what there's always thresholds at whatever conversion you're going for. And yet a lot of the search stuff, and still direct as well, direct and that word of mouth based stuff still does great guns for us, because there's a longer term strategy there. That's this kind of safe and nest egg. And like you say, there's articles from 2008 that are still dominating those terms. And I look back at articles that I looked at when I started. So what's that? 2000? Yeah, about 2009, 2010, and they're still there.
Yes.
I researched them and I'm like, oh, this post still does really, really well. You know, there's longer term strategy involved, you know?
Yes. And contrary to that, I mean, I'll segue into a little tip that I want to give all your listeners is the responsibility that you give yourself when you're playing in this evergreen area is that you should be going back and updating content. You should think of this as, another analogy. I mean, this is a plant, this is a garden, this is something that you are nurturing and growing over time. So when you reap the benefits of being around long term, you also gain that responsibility of having to go back, find things that are broken in your content and update it, find outdated information, find images that can be updated. You know, for software people, if you have a piece of content where you're walking through a piece of software, guess what? Software changes, right? I mean, you don't want a post with a software interface from 2010. So you got to update that stuff. And the very tactical way I recommend doing this is go to your Google Search Console report and just look at your most visible pieces of content, but that are attracting the least amount of clicks. And so what I mean by that is sort by impressions and then go for the lowest click-through rate content. So you could start with content that's driving the most traffic. I mean, that's good too, to update the stuff that people are looking at the most. But I like going for that, like, okay, you got your top chunk of content that's working really well. Let's go for that second tier chunk of content and make that as good as the top content. So you're always trying to like make the second quality stuff the first quality stuff. And that's really important to go back and update content, because we said that, oh, there's stuff from 2008 ranking. Well, the longer the web's around and the longer competitors come along, I've had so many of my clients that have older content. They've been updating stuff religiously, and that's really important.
Yeah. I mean, I know like digital marketer are constantly updating. Like they'll have a version 2 and a version 3 of the post. I think that was one of the tweets I sent you. As I said, hey man, you know, I think it was a post on books. We read a series of books. I was like, but we've read more since then, and we kind of wanted to update it. I see other people doing it, but I was like, do I change the post? Do I copy it? And you said, I'll make sure I've remembered what you said. It's the same post. Make sure that you've mentioned in the post that it's updated. Make those updates, and then resubmit the publish date, right?
Yeah. So, and I want to reemphasize that, because since I tweeted that to you, the client I was talking about that had the Facebook update happen, they went back and updated one piece of content and maybe made a few little tweaks. All they did was change the publish date, and they're back on page 1.
Wow.
Now, again, this is I'm purposely putting this longer into the interview so only the diehard listeners get to hear this. Again, test. Don't just take what I say as like, oh, I just update my publish date and like, magic. It could have been a very specific set of inputs and situation that caused this to happen here. But what I think I want to do with my site actually is, if you look at evolvingseo.com, all my blog posts have the dates in the URL.
Yeah.
And what I want to test that I want to eventually maybe push out to my client is removing all the dates from the URL. So I had a situation 4 years ago where I was working for a client that owns a whole portfolio of websites. They bought a site that probably a lot of your listeners know about. It's in the financial space. Yep. It's a financial content site for consumers. And they bought the site. And one of the first things they did was they ripped out all the URLs or the dates from the URLs.
Yeah.
I was sitting there telling them, don't do it. Like, you're going to put in all these redirects and like, I don't think you should be doing this. And they wrote back like, it's done already. And I was like, oh my goodness. The next day, their traffic doubled.
Yeah. Wow.
So I was like, wow. I'm glad you didn't listen to me.
Yeah, definitely.
But, and that was 4 years ago or 5 years ago.
But that's this is again, kind of the point. A big problem that people find with SEO is that it is a really it's a long burn strategy.
Yeah.
And it's, we get these kind of viral posts come up and viral terms, but the reality is most of the traffic and most of the searches require a longer term game plan behind it. And you can only really start experimenting and finding out what works when you have got that in the bank. We've got something like 250 posts. I think it's more than that, close to 200 videos. I can now start playing around with things and start seeing how does stuff work, because I have this longer term ability to start seeing those changes. You're not going to see those changes by doing it to one post and then just leaving it and that's it. This requires you to have done the work in the back end to be able to reap the benefits in the future.
Yeah, like I said up top, I mean, there's a few things here and there that are kind of like these SEO hacks.
Yep.
But for the most part, it's the work. It's putting in the hard work, like you mentioned.
You talk about those hacks on your podcast?
A little bit. I mean, some guests have had these experiences where they try something and it works, like removing the dates from the URLs. I had a podcast guest, Stephanie Briggs, on last fall. And one big part of the discussion we talked about was these featured snippets that you get at the top of search results.
Yeah.
And they had increased, I forget the percentage, a lot. They had increased the featured snippet amount of actually a financial website, I believe, like 300% or something like that. And they did it meticulously. Every piece of content, they would reformat the heading. They make sure the answer was right after the question, which was in the heading. I mean, this is a whole thing that the listener should just go check out that episode. She spells out the whole process for this. But this is one of, a half a dozen of these little tweaks that are still possible with search, where you can just kind of tweak the couple words or like reformat stuff. But in this case, you got to do it on every piece of content. I mean, you do it one piece of content. If you get one featured snippet, it's not like you're going to double your traffic, right? I mean, you got to do it across a lot of pieces of content. So, but that's one example of these sort of things you can do now.
Man, I absolutely love that. I just want to do a quick recap. There's been so much, and it's really interesting again, because particularly the SEO, Facebook, Google relationship, because I think a lot of people predominantly rely on one channel for one aspect. Like they might say, well, Facebook is our cold traffic and Google PPC is our remarketing, for example. But they both offer so much, and all the different channels offer so much at different stages. But you talked at the beginning, like let's say you start, is this concept of grouping keywords into intent buckets, yeah?
Yeah.
And that intent is at different stages of the funnel and the buying process, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. And I really like Made to Stick. We'll check that out. And there's that concept of the curse of knowledge, yeah, which is like kind of taking for granted what you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the perspective from Made to Stick was that as the business owner, you're going to try to explain things without having the perspective or the empathy of your user. So you almost have to think of like how, well, you have to pretend you're dumb in that situation again. You know, you got to put on that beginner's hat to explain it well.
Yeah, no, really good. I like that a lot. And then we talked about growing. You actually used a case study or an anecdote of this blog traffic and the relationship between SEO and Facebook. And I absolutely love, the more I think about it, the more I like it, the difference between energy sources. You know, one of them's solar and one of them's kind of coal, and, you know, one of them is a longer term and the other one absolutely can spike and drop. But there is a correlation between them. And by just putting all your eggs in one basket, you know, you're setting yourself up for perhaps a bit of a problem.
And I should mention, so literally Google and Facebook might have this relationship, but what I want the listeners to understand is what I think the concept is Google is going with, which is signs of brand and community around your website. And so they do look to Facebook for that, because any public Facebook page, they can crawl it, they can see your feed, they can see commenting. But for example, another sign of community for Google that they've literally said is blog comments. So if you have content that gets a lot of comments, Google actually uses that as a sign of content quality, which is a component of engagement or community around your brand. So it's not literally just Facebook. I want your listeners to think about all of the public places in the web that could show signs of community around your brand or your product. So that's kind of the big level idea with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. So like you say, rather than just Facebook, if you have your
public Pinterest board or
Pinterest boards, that's great. They're going to be searching for that, seeing, well, what's the interaction between what they're pushing out and what people are listening to, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think about, like, I have alerts set up for my podcast, Experts on the Wire. I have alerts set up in BuzzSumo. And if BuzzSumo can send me, you know, all of the mentions of my podcast on a daily basis, of course Google's looking at that. You know, of course Google's looking at how many times people asked about my podcast in Reddit, and then somebody answered, "Oh, this podcast is great," or whatever. So, I mean, that's probably a component of what Google's looking at in terms of site and brand quality.
No, man, I like that a lot. And we've seen as well, like book launches. Book launches have got a very, very specific process. And the first one is get a bunch out there, get as many reviews as you can on Amazon. And wouldn't you know it, the ones with a load of reviews on Amazon rank higher than the ones that don't.
Yeah. Surprise.
Yeah. You know, so there's a lot of this stuff that you can begin to set up, you know, and you can begin to control, and it will actually benefit your SEO, you know, and it's not strictly directly an SEO tactic. So that's awesome.
Yep.
And a final great piece, update your content and tell the world and tell Google that you've updated it, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Like I said, updating that date could be one of these few little hacks that you might want to try. But like I said, test it. Don't just take what I say. And then think about the long term. I mean, that's a short-term hack, but that's going to run out. I mean, you can't just, like, what are you going to do? Like, oh, I updated my date yesterday. Let's update it today. Like, you're not going to, you know, you're only going to get a certain amount of mileage out of that. So just be smart about it.
Yeah. And that's why some of these hacks, again, the longer term strategy of publishing once a week to people and sharing with them and getting people to read it is, these kind of like small term things that you can do are really important. And they certainly have their place within the marketing mix. But to say that you could treat them the same and repeatedly do them in the same way that you would actually just be publishing content and pushing it out, they're two very, very different tactics, you know?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Man, that's so good. And I'll be honest, it's basically free consultation really for me, because it's so important to begin to see those correlations, and the bit between community and how Google views your community out there in comparison to what it ranks. That's a real gold nugget there, and I think that's going to change a lot of people's perception about how they build up an SEO, you know, attraction strategy for their various stages in the funnel. Yeah, very cool. Where can people reach out to you and find out more?
Sure. So I'd love if people want to check out the podcast, Experts on the Wire. It's in iTunes. It's at evolvingseo.com/wire, Stitcher, Google Play, all these places. You can find my website, but where I'm probably most accessible and might consider my home base online is Twitter at DAN_SHURE. as my buddy Will Reynolds in the search space would call me _Shore. That was his nickname for me.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, but yeah, from there you can find my LinkedIn and go crazy.
Awesome, man. Again, and thanks for the book recommendation as well, Made to Stick. I'll go ahead and start checking that out. Dan, thank you very much for coming on and talking SEO and traffic with us. It was awesome.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
No worries, man. I'll speak to you later. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I absolutely love talking to Dan. He's got such a great presence on both his podcast and on Twitter at Dan_Shure. Definitely go ahead and check him out because I absolutely love watching his tweets and just seeing the stuff that he's experimenting with and talking with. Very, very authentic guy. Talks about things that he's got right, talks about things that he's got wrong. Really enjoyed talking about that. Like I said, it completely flipped my idea of SEO when we talk about how Google is crawling those community-based pages like forums, YouTube comments, Facebook groups, all of these things that allow Google to kind of understand how you as a business are interacting with your community. Therefore, it'll weight things like blog comments as well was a big one for me. So yeah, really, really interesting. Really glad to talk to Dan again. It's been a while since I've caught up with him, and I'll see you on another video. Thanks very much, guys. Speak to you later.